So maybe as we begin, we could take a moment and acknowledge that we appreciate ourselves or would like to. We don't have to do it now, but we offer that as an invitation. May I appreciate myself, just that I'm alive, that I am orienting towards a liberative practice or a healing practice. It's a little easier to say. I appreciate myself, and I appreciate being here, being willing to be part of a small community. Thank you for being here. We could say to ourselves, thank you. And I would like to add one more that isn't traditional, which is thank you for being willing to learn to hold all the things that are most difficult to hold inside of ourselves and outside. Thanks for trying to learn. Thank you. That's like such a big thing, isn't it? When we're in pain or trauma is up for us, it's such a big thing to hold that and to want to learn how to hold it in ways that we can find some space from suffering. That's very beautiful. So, and then I appreciate you, Sangha members, for supporting me in this. Thank you for being here. I appreciate all of us. Thank you for being here. And then I wanted to just say a little bit about the last factor on the Eightfold Path, which is the factor of cultivating concentration. And the definition of concentration is non-distraction. Another image of it is collecting and becoming collected. So you know, it's the difference between going out somewhere, well, let's say to the market, to an open-air market, or could be our gardens. And you know, we need to shop for vegetables, and so we go from one stall to another, or we go in our gardens from one garden bed to another, or even just shopping in the supermarket from one row of foods to the other row. And we collect everything and bring it together in one place. And it's a very different feeling, you know, just contemplating that image of having food on all these different shelves or on different stalls in the market or in a garden, depending on what we have access to. And everything being disparate, is that the word? And dispersed. And then having it all come together in one place. And seeing it all in our shopping basket, or having all those flowers in a vase, it has a whole different experience of togetherness, a kind of different weight than when it's all dispersed. And that's what non-distraction is, the collectedness of our energies and our mind in one place. in that place, what we decide to direct that collectedness to depends on where we're at, where our minds are at the moment. So sometimes it really helps to take one object and just to really focus on it. And it could be anything. Actually, it said that there are, how many? 40 different experiences, 40 different places to focus. And there's some traditional, there's the ones that we know, like the breath, and like colored wheels. There's the 32 parts of the body. There's metta, loving kindness meditation, or any of the divine abodes, or all of them. And there is contemplating the refuges and just seeing them over and over again, or contemplating generosity, the different aspects of generosity. Michelle McDonald talks about a monk that lives near the monastery where she teaches in Myanmar, and he's called the happy monk, just like exudes this incredible happiness. And she had the opportunity to visit him, this is some years ago, and she said to him, even though it was a little edgy as a lay woman talking to a monk, a senior monk, "What's your practice?" And he said, "I sit in front of the Buddha and I contemplate his generosity and just say Buddha, Buddha, Buddha." And he'd been doing that for years, and it had generated this amazing happiness. That is to say that we have that capacity, even if it's for much less time than many years, to rest our mind on a person or a thing, like a statue, or a tree, or a candlelight, or a part of our body, like just the hands or just the feet, or just the ears, and the way there's that subtle vibration when we hear sound in the eardrum. Whatever it is, we can, and one of my big things is walking, just really feeling lifting, placing, shifting, lifting, placing, shifting, where we just focus on that, and we sort of pretty much invite the mind to ignore everything else, and we focus on that. And what's beautiful about that is that it gives the mind a rest from just and can give the mind a rest from difficult emotions as well. But if it feels like too much of a struggle, then that's not the right practice for that. And the mind becomes more collected, and the experience becomes more pleasant. And so it's easier for the mind to really soften and open. And then that becomes the ground, a very fertile field for insight. So if it feels that it would be supportive and it isn't like a big struggle, then, and the mind feels very like every way, which way, and it can change. It could be that there's one sitting where you're like, oh yeah, my mind is so collected or semi-collected, and then you come back again in an hour and it's like, what happened? I cannot stay present for a single second, and my mind is off again. And that is how it is. It isn't like this is a just deterministic process. You know, it's not like if I do one thing, then it's going to make that thing always happen for the rest of my life or for the rest of the sitting. You know, luckily for us, that isn't the case. It's that it's changing all the time, which gives us a possibility for change. So taking it not as like I am going to build this whole edifice by always focusing on this one thing, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to, you know, a little bit hunch up, and I'm going to really concentrate on it. But more, can I gather the materials in one basket? And then bring that collectedness of attention to what it is that I'm noticing. And that collectedness of attention allows for loving kindness and mindfulness to be there. So, instead of like, oh my God, here I'm thinking again, and I'm just sick and tired of my thoughts, it could be, oh thinking, I want to come, I want to bring myself back. I'm bringing this flower back into the basket. I wanted to read to you what a teacher Utejanier says, because he really does not emphasize concentration at all, and this is what he says. I mean, one single object concentration. When the mind is thinking or wandering, just be aware of it. Thinking is a natural activity of the mind. You are doing well if you are aware of the mind thinking. But if you feel disturbed by thoughts, or if you have a reaction or judgment of them, then there's a problem with your attitude. The wandering mind is not the problem. Your attitude that they should not be around is the problem. So understand that you've just become aware of some function of the mind. These two are just experiences for your attention. Thinking is a mental activity. When you are new to this practice, you should not try to watch thinking continuously. Neither should you try to avoid observing thoughts by immediately going to your primary meditation object. When you realize that you're thinking, always pay attention to the thought first. And then remind yourself that a thought is just a thought. Do not think of it as my thought. Now you can return to your primary meditation object. When you feel disturbed by the thinking mind, remind yourself that you are not practicing to prevent thinking, but rather to recognize and acknowledge thinking when it arises. If you're not aware, you cannot know that you're thinking. The fact that you recognize that you're thinking means you are aware. Remember that it does not matter how many times the mind thinks, wanders off, or gets annoyed about something, as long as you're aware of it. So that's the kind of general context of appreciating ourselves. I appreciate myself. I appreciate that I notice when I've wandered off. When I notice it and I come back, I appreciate the mind's expression is thinking, and I notice now that I'm thinking, and I'm gathering my energies into a basket. So that kind of both and, rather either or but. I'm gathering my energies, oh, thinking, oh, coming back. I'm gathering my energies, oh, thinking, oh, coming back into the basket. Oh, thinking, coming back. And don't make the mistake that thinking that much and returning that much is a bad practice. It isn't. It isn't. It's just aversion and judgment making it a bad practice. No teacher says it's a bad practice in the Dharma. No teacher. says it's a bad practice. Yeah? So collecting ourselves by coming back. And then if what we're coming back to, like, yeah, I'd like to collect myself, but I can't really stay that close and connected to myself because it's so intense or so difficult, then that's the time to take a object like the Buddha, or like loving kindness, or like contemplating your generosity, or like moving, or like singing and praying, or whatever it is that gives the mind a break and a rest in that way. Yeah? Does that make sense so far? Yeah. And then just to acknowledge again the story about the happy monk, contemplating the refuges or our own generosity or metta, that they are traditional practices that bring about the conditions for realization. So don't think they're like secondary. They're beautiful practices to let the mind become absorbed in beautiful contemplations, and contemplations that bring you ease. And I worked with a student once, and his practice, he was experiencing extreme trauma, and his practice was stroking his pet, sitting down and stroking his pet for 20 minutes twice a day. And that was his gateway in. So in a way, we're saying whatever works for you, right? Whatever works for you to bring, to recollect into that basket. We have the capacity to pay attention, otherwise we wouldn't recognize anything. We wouldn't recognize the house we live in, we wouldn't recognize a road, a car. The mind has that capacity to direct itself towards whatever the experience is. And so that is born in us, and we are building another quality very close to that, which is the mental quality of sustaining that connection. So making contact, I'm making contact with whatever I've decided to practice, and then intending to sustain that connection. May I sustain it. Like if a friend is talking to you, and you really want to be there, and your mind wanders off into something else, then you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to really do that. I want to sustain my connection. I really want to sustain my recollection of the refuges or being with the breath. Not as a work, not as a I'm practicing to work to get somewhere. No, as an appreciation of wanting to connect more deeply with myself by building the conditions for that to happen when I can and when it's available. So being relaxed counts for 80% of this practice. So, big breath up, and breathe, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, and then allow the arms to come down, the breath to be released. See how that feels in the back, in the buttocks, in the legs. Notice what happens then if the next breath comes or not, or if it's sensations in the body. And one more time. And releasing. And then invite for yourself how you would like to frame the rest of this practice time together. How would you like to offer the invitation that brings relaxation and ease and the orientation towards collectedness, wherever that happens. Being kind. We could start with thank you, thank you, thank you, life being, for wanting to heal, to awaken. Thank you. To be free. Thank you. I so appreciate that I want to. So many people want to but don't find the Dharma. Or so many people can't find the wanting, that movement of the heart towards healing. See how the breath lives in your appreciation, or body sensations. Keeping it simple, hands, and where they're resting. Touch of cloth against the chest. The movement of the breath, that gift from the universe. Here, may I gift you the necessary oxygen that you might live. And receiving that gift. We're collected, present for it. It might be the winds and the universe say, oh, you forgot already, no problem, let me gift you another breath. Or it might be you go to the phrases of metta. May I be safe and protected. May I be at ease. May I hold all parts of myself with love. And if I can't do it now, may I be able to in the future. Or offering these phrases to someone we unconditionally love, a child, a pet, trees, the earth, a favorite river. Being willing to explore the inner territory of your heart and what best supports you. Thank you. Thank you for your practice.